Shonak crouched low as he peered over the desolate landscape. Before him lay unconquered lands with untold treasures. His scouts had reported a rival army approaching on the horizon. His own forces stood behind him, waiting for the order to attack. It had been far too long since his warrior had spilt blood. It was time for war. Hey, what's going on, Ninth Age? This is Obsidian Anubis, and I'm back with another Ninth Age battle report. This is game 1 of a 3-day tournament I just attended. I was playing Orcs and Goblins versus Saurian Ancients. About a 4,500 point list, and let's go and look into it. So this is an overview of the army I decided to bring to the tournament. In the front left, I have my 10 Feral Orc Boar Boys with additional hand weapons and full command. In the center, I have 2 Orc Chariots, as you can see. In the center back, I have my Double D-Rock, which is my Gargantula, with a web launcher. And then to the left and right, I have 2 5 Goblin Raiders. They just have the throwing, the paired weapons upgrade. And then in the front right, I have Sharnuk's Horde, which are 30 Feral Orc Edbashers with additional hand weapon, Mammoth Stabber, full command, and the Banner of Speed. And behind them, I have the Red Ard Boys, which are 24 Iron Orcs with full command and the Iron Hide icon. For characters, I brought 4 characters. First is Wazhorn the Feral. He is a shaman level who knows 1 spell of shamanism. He is the Hero Sword and the War Boar. Next to him is Saragoth Totem Bearer. He is a Feral Orc chief with with paired weapons, Mithril Mail, and the Wog Paint. And then I have Swinegate Bortusk, who knows 3 spells of shamanism and has the Scepter of Power and is a wizard master. And next to him is my general, Sharnuk Swine Rider, who has the Glittering Curtis, Lucky Charm, Axe of the Apocalypse, and a shield, and a war boar, of course. So for this first battle, it was a classic deployment with the secondary objective being hold the ground. That icon in the top right of this picture that looks like 2 spears, that is a placeholder icon that I had made and brought to represent the center of the battlefield. And then the special scenario for this first game was no one could place more than 1 unit at a time, and you can only ever get a +1 to rolling off to see who went first. So my opponent ended up winning this choice to deployment. I went ahead and chose to deploy first. I ended up, I think, dropping my last unit 1 unit before he did, so I got a +1. However, he did manage to beat me on the roll and go first. So over here on my left flank, I have my Boar Chariot with my Ard Boys. Next to them on my Sharnuk's Horde with the level 3 and the BSB in them. In front of them is just 5 Goblin Raiders. And then over on my right flank, I have my 10 Orc Bull Boys with the General Sharnuk and the level 1 on Boar. Next to them is my Double D-Rock. And then on my far right, I have my Boar Chariot just behind 5 Goblin Raiders. So my opponent, on his right flank, he has 5 Chameleons. Next to that, he has a Salamander. Next to that, on the hill, he has 6 Raptor Riders. And in that unit is a Warlord Chikatil, who is a firstborn veteran. He has the Armor of Destiny and a great weapon. In the center, my opponent has 33 Sarsaurians with spears and full command. And next to them is a group of 15 Temple Guard with full command. And with them is the Lord Chokochomikui, who is the Ancient Knowledge, Wellspring of Power, the Egaquetzal, and the Razor Blade. Next to him is a second Salamander. And then over on my opponent's right flank is 10 Sars Warriors, a Tower Sword with the Engine of the Ancients, 3 Ramphrodons, and then behind them are 5 Chameleon Skinks. So I don't have a picture of movement phase. My opponent didn't move up too much. The left side didn't really move at all. The right side, the Tower Sword and the 10 Sars Warriors moved up. The 3 Ramphrodons moved to the far right of this picture so that they were behind the rock, so I could not see them. In Magic phase, my opponent got 8 power dice. However, the Lore of Divination, which is what my opponent was wielding on his Quetzal Lord, really didn't have the range to get anything. Yes, this is what the right side of the board looks like. My opponent did get a few spells off on the Raptor Riders. One of those is the Shielding Light, which is the attribute, and I don't remember what the other spell is, but overall they didn't do much. In shooting, the chameleons killed 2 of my Goblin Raiders, and they failed the panic test and started to run away. And that brings us to Orcs and Goblins turn 1. So I moved up fairly aggressively, as I didn't have much shooting or any artillery in this list. I moved up relatively aggressively, moved my spiders to chaff up the Raptor Riders, and then moved up the Feral Orc Horde and the Boar Boys to see if they could get some charges off next turn. On the right side, I was a little bit more conservative. I did rally the 3 Goblin Raiders, and I decided not to move the chariot because I didn't want to get charged in the flank by the Raptorons or anything. And then I just kind of moved up the Double D Rock a little bit, as you can see here. In Magic Phase, I managed to get the Swarm of Insect off on one of the Salamanders and put 2 wounds on it. I also got off the Chilling Howl on the chariot on the left, so that way his chameleons would need 6s and not just 5s to hit. And I also got off Break the Spirit off on the Raptor Riders, so if my opponent wanted to charge the Raptor Riders into my Goblin Raiders, he'd be taking dangerous terrain. So that brings us to Saurian Ancient turn 2. So over on the right, the Raptorons moved up behind the chariot. Those markers that are next to the chariot and the goblins, those are the hatred markers that these Raptorons come with. My opponent attempted to charge the Pterosaur into the Double D Rock, but failed that charge. And then in the center of the board, you can see they kind of moved up to get within range of multiple of his spells and to start shooting at me. And he did not charge his Raptor Riders. So in the Magic Phase or in shooting, between the 2 of them, I lost about, I think, 6 of my Feral Orcs from both shooting and Magic. My opponent also managed to put 1 wound on the chariot on the far left from the Chameleon Skinks. And this is how the board looks at the end of my opponent's turn. So on my turn, I elected to charge with the chariot and the Double D Rock into the Pterosaur. And then I also charged the Orc Boar Boys, who you notice I'm missing a couple now from magical shooting. I charged them into the Temple Guard and the big block of ferals into the Saurus Warriors with spears. I also charged this chariot into the Raptor Riders, and unfortunately the way it was angled, I had to charge the Goblin Raiders into the Raptor Riders as well, otherwise the chariot wouldn't be able to close the door, and so it would be a failed charge. So this is how it ended up after charges. Unfortunately, when I was making the charges, I didn't think it through, and I got a little bloodthirsty, but I am a Feral Orc, so I do get bloodthirsty. That is what I do. I didn't think about the spatial reasoning between the Ferals on foot and the Feral Bull Boys, and that they wouldn't both fit in between the hill and the building. So what I should have done is charge the general out of the unit of Boar Boys and just into the Temple Guard alone. I think that would have actually changed this battle significantly. You'll see what I'm talking about in a few slides, but I think that mistake definitely hurt me later on in the game. In close combat, Ferals do what Ferals do best. I did get a few spells off. I did get Break the Spirit off, so my opponent was getting a -1 to hit me, but I lost about half a rank, which is about 5 or 6 Ferals, and in return I killed about 16 to 18 of the Saurus Warriors with spears. They auto-broke. Unfortunately, I was unable to catch them, but I did overrun into the Temple Guard. This is why I think I should have charged my general out and into this unit, because if I would have fought him second, then my Ferals could have kept fighting with my general. However, hindsight's 20/20. In combat with the chariot and the goblins, my chariot impact hits whiffed. I think I rolled 2, and of those I think only 1 actually killed a guy. The spiders did nothing, and he easily killed the spiders, which broke the chariot, so it ran from combat, and I think it also took 2 wounds as well. And my opponent kind of reformed, as you can see here. In close combat over with the Pterosaur, I managed to put 3 wounds on the Pterosaur. However, he put 3 wounds back on this spider. Again, I think my impacts whiffed. I think I actually rolled a 6 for impacts, but when I rolled the wound, I just rolled 1s or 2s. I think it was the 2 orcs on the back of the chariot which actually managed to put a couple wounds on it. So as you can see, my opponent countercharged with his Saurus Warriors into the flank of my chariot. And then he also charged his Raptoron Riders, which you can see on the just far left of this picture, into the Boar Boys as well as the Raptor Riders. So he counterflanked with both flanks into the Boar Boys, and that was not going to go well. My opponent also had a big magic phase this turn and managed to get a few spells off on his Temple Guard, one of them being Know Thy Enemy. I think he also got off the Stars Align, so his Temple Guard was striking first with initiative 5, initiative 4, weapon skill 5, or 6 even, so it was not going to go well. In shooting, my opponent's chameleons just shot the rest of the spiders and destroyed them. And then in close combat, yeah, I was hoping, since my opponent charged in his Raptidons, that my general would be able to kill all of them and get some combat resolution. Unfortunately, I kind of whiffed with my attacks and only managed to kill 2 of them. And in return, you can see my opponent wiped out all of my Boar Boys and put a wound on my Shaman. I don't know if this was an auto break, but it was a significant difference, and I failed my break check and fled, and my opponent caught me and wiped me out. So there goes my Warlord Sharnock in the first battle. So not a good way. You can see that I did manage to kill off the Tower Soar in this fight with the spider though. So my double D-Rock did manage to kill it. However, I ended up losing combat and my chariot broke and fled with 1 wound remaining. However, my double D-Rock was luckily stubborn and did pass its leadership 6. And it actually managed to reform as well, as you can see, turning to face the incoming charge that my opponent will probably do next turn. In combat with the Temple Guard, this picture was actually from my turn. I killed a couple of Temple Guard, but with my opponent having all those buff spells off, he easily won combat, broke me. Luckily, he did not catch me. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't think he pursued, but I did manage to rally on Orcs and Goblins turn 3. However, you can see that I'm down to just over 10. Actually, I have 9 Feral Orcs, it looks like, in 2 characters. So that unit is greatly depleted. So on my turn, after rallying, they just kind of reformed into a block form, because they weren't going to do too much more. I also managed to rally my chariot, although it'll probably be picked to pieces by the chameleons over here. And I actually rallied this chariot as well, so everything I had rallied, that was running, so that's a plus, at least. In Magic Phase, I managed to get 5 Power Dice, which I think I managed to get Chilling Howl on the not the chariot by the spider, but the chariot by the chameleons. So my opponent needed 6s to wound instead of just 5s and 6s. And I think that was the only spell I got off. This is close combat. I've killed, I think, 4 or so of the Saurus Warriors, and I think I'm sitting on 1 wound remaining. I think the double D-Rock has only 1 wound, so it is not looking too good to be that spider right now. On my opponent's turn, yeah, you can see he moved the chameleons around to continue shooting at the chariot. He considered charging the Temple Garden, but elected not to and just kind of moved the Salamander up as chaff. He also did rally the Saurus Warriors with the spears that had fled on the previous turn from the Feral Orcs. And then he charged in the Raptidon and the Raptors with the General. Oh yes, I did manage to break the Spirit off on this unit last turn as well. And he actually failed 2 of his dangerous terrain, so he brought it down. So he only had 2 Raptor Riders and his General, or his Warlord, charging in on this turn. He also moved his Skinks around to act as redirector if they didn't manage to kill the Chariot. And in close combat, yeah. I tried, but my double D-Rock couldn't hold off against those. Between the Raptor Riders, the Ramphidon, and the General, he couldn't quite do it, and was wiped out, unfortunately. In shooting, my opponent shot and killed quite a few more of my Feral Orcs, so I only have 3 Feral Orcs left, and the Wizard, and the BSB, who is actually, if you notice, he's actually in combat with the Temple Guard. So this picture is a little out of order. So what happened is, in the shooting phase, my opponent wiped out this unit down to just 3 Feral Orcs and the 2 characters. And in my turn, I didn't want to charge the Salamander with my entire unit, because if I did, they'd have to overrun and be giving the flank to the Temple Guard. Not to mention being charged in the front by the Yes, so yeah, I didn't want to offer my flank to the Temple Guard. So I elected just to charge my BSB out, who my opponent fled from the Salamander with. I actually caught and killed the Salamander and actually overran into the Temple Guard, which isn't really what I wanted to do, but it ends up what happened. I also charged this chariot into the Chameleon Shaft since they did not destroy me last turn. In Magic Phase, I got 11 power dice, and I think I threw up the uh, not the Chilling Howl, the one with the opponent, if they make any type of movement, takes dangerous terrain. But I don't remember what spell that's called. In close combat, I might have killed one. My opponent put one wound on my BSB. However, I had a charge, I think one wound and a BSB. My opponent had one wound, a rank, and a BSB, or a banner. So we ended up tying. So I guess that works. That holds them up for now. These Temple Guard, these Saurus Warriors, I just kind of had rallied on previous turn, just kind of sat back here, just trying to keep them out of the way and probably just keeping them for points. So on my opponent's turn 5, he didn't move too much. The Chameleons are still just trying to harass that one chariot. On the right side, the Raptor Riders turned around and started moving up. Same with the Raptidon went after the chariot, which did kill the Chameleons last turn, and the Raptidon charged that and destroyed that chariot. Yeah, that's all I have to say about this. So this brings us to Orcs and Goblins in turn 5. So I declared a charge with my chariot into the Spear Saurus Warriors. The BSB is still in combat with the Temple Guard. I elected to take my wizard out of the Feral Orc unit. I marched or moved him right in front of the Raptor Riders as chaff to block both of them from charging the Feral Orcs and as well as the Saurus Warriors from behind them. So because the building and the Raptor Riders, there isn't enough room though for those Saurus Warriors to charge through into the Feral Orcs. So I basically sacrificed my wizard to save my Feral Orcs from being completely annihilated. I also moved up my Iron Orcs to more of the center so that they could hold the center objective. In Magic Phase, I got 7 power dice and threw up the Swarm of Insects. I think I threw these off at the Raptor Riders, and I actually managed to kill one, which is impressive since they only have a 2-up save. So I thought that was quite lucky. On my opponent's turn 6, you can see he charged his Raptor Riders into my poor wizard. He marched his Saurus Warriors with the spears up right next to the Iron Orcs. And then you can see the Raptoron, the one that is freshly destroying my previous chariot, moved up. And as you can see, my other chariot that made it into the Saurus Warriors with spears, it did a handful of impact hits, but then was quickly destroyed. So at this point, this is my opponent's turn. My BSB now has 2 wounds and actually dies in this close combat, as well as my wizard dies in this close combat. So this brings us to Orcs and Goblins turn 6. So the way it stands now, my opponent's Temple Guard and the Saurus Warriors with spears are both within 6 inches of the center objective. However, the Raptor Rider is outside of 6 inches, as well as the small unit of 5 Saurus Warriors on the right side of the building. So my opponent has 2 banners within the objective area. I still have my... Well, I guess you don't need banners. So my opponent has 2 scoring units within 6 inches of the center, the Temple Guard and the Saurus Warriors with spears. I have 2 scoring units, the 3 remaining Feral Orcs and the Iron Orcs left. So at this point, I know I'm losing the battle, so I could just go for basically nothing and just keep my units within 6 inches and stay safe. However, I decided to go ahead and charge because I am bloodthirsty. I am an orc. So I charged my Iron Orcs into the Saurus Warriors. They elected to flee, so I redirected into the Temple Guard. So as long as my Iron Orcs don't die, I will claim the secondary objective, as the Saurus Warriors that fled are outside 6 inches, and I have 2 units which are within 6 inches. So as long as my Iron Orcs don't die in this fight and break, I will get the secondary objective. As it stands, I lost about half of them, but I did do a fair number of wounds in return. Unfortunately, this Temple Guard unit was buffed again, so I did manage to. I think I lost combat, but only by a couple, and I managed to not break. So it ended up being a 5-15. However, I won the secondary objective because I had 2 units, so it became an 8-12. So it was a loss, but only a minor loss. So not too bad for the game 1 of the 3-game tournament. The batteries on my headset are heading out, so I'm actually going to go ahead and log off now. But if you guys have any comments or concerns, please put those in the comment section below. And as always, hit like and subscribe. Game on.